makes that clear, that we are the ones chosen by Allah. Whoever recognizes us goes to Jannah. Whoever rejects us goes to Jahannam.
Because when you do that, you know what happens? You end up doing takfir of the entire ummah, which is what your sect has been doing for centuries. This is an established reality that the vast majority of Shi'as after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam did not believe in the Imamah of al-Kadhim. And so after every Imam dies, we just check who is next on the list. The problem is this list did not exist. After the demise of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, then all these texts miraculously started popping up of 12 Imams and 12 Imams and 12 Imams. Pre-Ghaiba period, the early Imamiyya knew of no concept of 12 Imams. If we can't go to them for dispute resolution, if we can't take our ikhtilafat to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, then what's the point of having the Imams of Ahlul Bayt?
Anyone who studied the Imami Turath will know that actually in our own Turath, Imamah is a secret.
They never went to the Muslims and said, look, Allah has appointed us as Imams.
He said Ghadeer was not enough for you to know who the next leader was.
Ya Ali. At most, Ghadeer would have some sort of proof for Imam Ali. I don't really see the proof for the rest of the Imams.
They will tell you, no, Hadith al-Ghadeer is not qat'iyyud dalala. But the second point is that the Holy Prophet appointed many people for many different tasks. Is believing in those appointments also an aqaidi issue?
It's nothing to do with, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah's going to ask you about it. It's just a political reference. My first question to Sayed Ammar on this issue is a very direct question. Why have Shia Imamiyya scholarship believed in Tarif al-Quran?
But then after Imam Ali alayhi salam himself goes and gives bay'ah to Abu Bakr, as is established in both Shia and Sunni sources.
Therefore, I've got Imamah, Nubuwwah, and Tawheed in one ayah of the Quran.
Whoa. Whoa. What? How did you get there? You haven't established nothing yet. How have we got all the way there yet?
Sometimes people say, Mawla never said he's chosen by... Listen to what he says. We are the vicegerents of Allah on earth.
Now he says the Imams are the vicegerents of Allah. He doesn't say we are the vicegerents of Allah. Imam Ali alayhi salam is accepting Uthman as an Imam. The belief system of the Quran ends at messengers. This part they will not mention usually.
Yeah,
because it is in praise of the ashab of the Prophet. Is it fair for us to expect Sayyid Ammar and his likes to sit on the mimbar and present the real historical Imam Ali alayhi salam? So this is the great zulm that our masses and our Jamaat leaderships are doing on the scholars and the learned people of the sect.
Because maybe your financial income is linked to the member. Maybe it should have not been... Well, not maybe, it should have never been linked to the member in the first place. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers, elders, youngers, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us again today back at Islaah. This is the second part of our recording of our show in relation to the famous speaker Sayed Ammar Nakshawani. As you would remember in the first part, what we done was we discussed his lecture that he done in the month of Ramadan, and that was about Imam Ali and the historical Imam Ali. So we wanted to analyze the historical Imam Ali, and he used the main textbooks that he used as a main textbook, Nahjul Balagha. So that's what we were kind of analyzing in part one, and we were going over the clips, responding to some of his points, because as you know, our whole dawah is to go back to the historical Imam Ali. So we felt like it was needed, as his claim was contradicting a lot of Nahjul Balagha, because we have with us again Dr. Syed Ali Hur Kamoonpuri. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Great to be here again.
Thank you so much, Syed, for joining us again. And I've introduced you again like that because, like I said, we have here with us again the lucky that I've got someone like you who's an expert, alhamdulillah, on Nahjul Balagha, who's put in the work, who's put in the effort on Nahjul Balagha, who knows and has actually written his dissertation, part of it on that. So you've still got that book with you, Syed, that dissertation? Can you see it again?
Yeah, it's actually in over 800 pages, as I mentioned the last time. And basically the arguments that I gave about the authenticity of Nahjul Balagha and how Sharif al-Radi could not have invented the texts that we were sharing the last time, was actually taken from this thesis. It's actually from page 265 onwards. It goes all the way to page 270. And so this is where I've listed the arguments that we were presenting the last time. So yeah, definitely.
Amazing to have someone with your expertise on this issue. So yeah, I think again, really again, appreciation and kudos to Sayyid Ammar for actually bringing the Shia Awam towards Nahjul Balagha, because that's essentially what we want. We want people to go towards Nahjul Balagha and look at it holistically and see, you know, does the Imam Ali of Nahjul Balagha match the Imam Ali that you believe in today? And this is where, you know, going back to the historical Imam Ali rather than the dogmatic theological charged one that we've made him. So without further ado, unless Sayyid, you want to add something, am I all right to carry on with the clips? Unless you want to add something, Sayyid?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Perfect. Moderator, let's go to clip 12, please.
The Quran would always say, obey Allah, obey the Prophet. Obey Allah, obey the Prophet. Obey Allah, obey the Prophet. Except this time. This time, what did it say? It said there's a group of people who are similar to the man we've asked you to obey before. How similar are they? Obedience to them is obedience to him. That means this group has to be so immaculate in their character. This group has to know the ilm of the religion inside out. This group's obedience is obeying Allah on earth. Yes?
Okay. So, yeah, I listened to that. I'm not sure I fully got, maybe there's a context that I might need to go back to clip 11, but the verse that he's talking about, is it still the Ulul Amr verse?
Yes, Surah 4, verse 59.
Okay, so we had already dealt with the obeying part and how, like he was saying, that's for re-emphasis and stuff like that. So Sayyid Ali Hur, have you, because I haven't really understood fully his point there. Maybe you want to elaborate, because he kind of lost me in what he was saying.
Yeah, it's a standard traditional argument that the Ulul Amr must be immaculate, they must be infallible. Why else would Allah ask us to
okay. Them? I get it now. Well, his point is that he's linking it back to the point of, you know, it's been joint with the Prophet's obedience. So because it's joint, it means this group have to be special, they have to be masoom, and they have to have all the knowledge. That's the only reason God has said to obey them unconditionally, like the way he's told you to obey the Prophet. That's essentially the gist of his argument, right?
Yeah, but this claim is falsified by the next clause that Allah mentions in that verse, which is فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. So if you ever have a dispute among yourselves, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ, then return the dispute back to Allah and the Messenger. If these Ulul Amr were as immaculate as the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have also included them in the list that you should also go to them for dispute resolution. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not include them is because they're not as immaculate. They're not as perfect. They are human. They can make mistakes. Sometimes they can even abuse their power. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the masses that you have to be vigilant, you have to be watchful, you have to be careful. So long as these people whom the Prophet is vesting with authority and appointing to different positions of power, such as governor, judge, expedition leader, all of these different people that the Prophet is appointing, the default is that you should obey them. But if you ever observe, if you ever notice that they're going against Allah and the Messenger, or they're going against the demands and dictates of reason, then by all means, in tanaza'tum fi shay'in, you can challenge them, you can critique them, you can dispute and challenge their commands. And in such a case, such a scenario, rudduhu ila Allahi wa Rasul, you can refer them back, or you can refer the matter back to Allah and the Messenger for final judgment. And in the referring back, Allah removes the Ulul Amr, because this whole clause is being introduced as a safeguard against abuse of power by those whom the Prophet is vesting with authority. So it's a really beautiful system. Allah knows that the Prophet's government is going to be based on humans. The Prophet cannot appoint infallibles only. because there aren't enough infallibles to fill all the posts in government. And that's why Allah is saying, no problem. The Holy Prophet will appoint people like Usama bin Zayd, whom he appointed the leader of the last expedition, if you recall. He will appoint people, for example, like Khalid bin Walid, who may abuse their power. But all of it is okay because you have recourse to Allah and the Messenger in case they go against the requirements of the Quran and the Sunnah.
I understand. Yeah, so it's basically, in a nutshell, I think there's certain verses that, because we're theologically charged, we read them in such a way that they don't even understand this is nothing to do with some sort of divine appointment. This is just to do with people being put in certain positions to run a government and obeying them up to the level that they obey Allah and His Rasul. When they disobey them, leave them. Very simple. It's not complicated. Moderator, next clip.
There's another point about them. Me and you can't verify who they are. Can you verify who's infallible? It's only the man who's bought the Risala who can verify. I can't just say, I think he is Ulil Amr. I don't know what he does in his private life. All I see him is at mosque praying. I don't know how he is in his private life. Only the man who has come to represent the ghaib. He is the only one who is able to tell you who are the Ulil Amr.
Yeah, so what Sayed Ammar doing is he's building upon a premise that hasn't been established. So the whole point, like now Ulil Amr in his brain and everyone's brain is now this already means, you know, these infallible people that are chosen by God. So since you've already started this, he's now building on top of that, saying now only the Prophet can tell you who they are. The problem is, aslan, it hasn't been established that this is anything to do with anything sort of divine appointment. Rather, this is nothing to do with that concept. So you're building upon something that hasn't been established in the first place. So yeah, the Prophet is the person that's going to tell us if someone was to come after him, but that hasn't been established in the first place. So you're building upon something that hasn't been established and is going higher and higher and higher and higher when the foundation is very weak.
But did you notice something? The claim that he's making, that only the Holy Prophet ﷺ can identify and pinpoint who the Ulil Amr are, this is unfortunately the layman Imami 12er view. Perhaps the layman may believe this. If you go to the learned 12er Imamiyah, scholars, researchers, people who know the creed inside out, they will tell you this is actually false. The Imams, yes, many of the later Imams were chosen and pinpoint and identified by the companions of those Imams, not by any previous Imam, and certainly not by the Prophet ﷺ. And so that this should not just look like a claim. Let me actually showcase the evidence in front of you, if you give me the permission.
While you do that, so let me just summarize. What you're saying is that Sayed Ammar is basically trying to show, if we even accept the premise that this is about, you know, whatever Imamah and people chosen, he's saying that look, only the Prophet can tell you who these people are. Now, in his mind, Imamiyah, he's saying 12 Imams. So these 12, only the Prophet can tell you who they are because he has a relationship with the ghaib. You're saying actually, and I expected actually, you're right, from a historical perspective, and Sayed Ammar is a historian, he's kind of caught himself out, because anyone who studied Imami history and the history of the Imams and the history of the Imamiyah, especially our mother, they would know that after each Imam, or after at least some Imams, there's been loads of disputes about who the successor is. There was no concept of the prophets told them who it is. Rather, the way that the successors were chosen were by the companions of the Imams, not based on any sort of, oh, the Prophet told us this, rather based on their own kind of sets and procedures.
Exactly. And let me show you the evidence for this, if you permit me.
Show us. Yeah, as a historian, these are things that you have to kind of, this is why it's important to know the history alongside your hadith literature.
Yes. So this, as you can see in front of you, is Usul al-Kafi. This is volume 1, chapter 81, the criterion to discern the truthful and false claims of entitlement to imamat, leadership with divine authority. This is hadith number 7. Now, this particular chain in Al-Kafi may not be the most reliable one, but this same narration and the claims, the key claims of this narration, have actually been transmitted in Imami sources through reliable chains as well. And that's why it's been included by the chain of Shaykh al-Mufid for this narration is actually reliable, and that's why Ayatollah Shaykh Muhammad Asif Muhsini has included it in chapter 53 of Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara. And you will also see it in chapter 114 of Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara, which is the collection of reliable narrations compiled by Ayatollah Shaykh Muhammad Asif Muhsini on the basis of the manhaj of Ilm al-Rijal that he follows, which is influenced by that of Ayatollah Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khoyi. Now, in this narration, you will see the learned Imamiyah are all familiar with this narration. It talks about how, observe very carefully what's going on, what's happening. Hisham ibn Salim, who is one of the closest companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, as per the traditional Imami narrative. Hisham ibn Salim said the following. He says, we were in Medina after Abu Abdullah, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, left this world. People had gathered around Abdullah ibn Ja'far, thinking that he was in charge of the task, that is leadership with divine authority. So can you imagine, after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, the vast majority of the Shia, they mobilized and they rallied around who? Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim? No. They gathered around Abdullah bin Ja'far as-Sadiq, Abdullah al-Aftah, as he's known, because they thought he was the Imam. Now, the question is, if the Holy Prophet, if only the Holy Prophet can identify who the Ulil Amr are, then was Abdullah bin Ja'far identified as being among the Ulil Amr by the Prophet? If not, then why did the people gather around him? Why did the vast majority of the Shia, including the greatest companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, why did they claim his Imamah? And why did they accept his Imamah? And this is an established factor. It's mentioned in Rijal al-Kashi. Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari will mention it. And Nawbakhti in Firaq al-Shia will acknowledge it. This is an established reality that the vast majority of Shi'as after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam did not believe in the Imamah of al-Kadhim. Rather, they rallied around and they claimed the Imamah of Abdullah bin Ja'far, because Abdullah bin Ja'far himself was claiming his Imamah. He was saying that I am the authority after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. But now Hisham ibn Salim says, I and Sahib al-Taq went to see him while people were around him because of a hadith. Now, why did the people accept Abdullah bin Ja'far? Because of a hadith that they would narrate from Abu Abdullah alayhi salam that said that the one who is in charge of the task, Sahib al-Amr, the Imam, leadership with divine authority, will be the eldest son if he would not suffer any defects. Okay, so the Shia were circulating this hadith that the eldest son is the one who's supposed to succeed the previous Imam. So again, no designation from the Prophet. It's not like the Shia in that time say that the Holy Prophet will identify who the Ulil Amr are for us. And so after every Imam dies, we just check who is next on the list. The problem is this list did not exist. And that's why, what was the criteria that they were using to determine who is the next Imam? They said, well, we have a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that says that the one who succeeds the Imam should be the eldest son, if he does not suffer from any defects. In any case, he then says, we went to see and ask him, that is Abdullah bin Ja'far as-Sadiq, what we used to ask his father. So do you see what's happening here? Hisham bin Salim has decided that because Abdullah bin Ja'far has claimed the Imamat, the vast majority of Shia have accepted his Imamah. Before I accept his Imamah, let me test him. And so he goes up to him and he tests him. He says, we asked him about zakat to find out on how much property it becomes due. He said it becomes as 5 on every 200. So we asked if it would be 100. He said it will be 2.5. We said, by Allah, the Murji'ah, this is basically the proto-Sunniza, the Murji'ah does not say so. The narrator has said that he raised his hands to the sky and said, by Allah, I do not know what the Murji'ah group says. So they are testing Abdullah bin Ja'far as-Sadiq to see whether his verdict on zakat will be the same as that of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, or whether it will agree with the Murji'ah or the mainstream Muslims. Okay, so why are they testing him? If the claim of the speaker is correct, that only the Prophet can identify who the Ulil Amr are, you and I and the regular people cannot determine who the Ulul Amr are, then does Hisham bin Salim, this very close companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, how come he doesn't know this principle? How come he's going all the way to test Abdullah bin Ja'far al-Sadiq? He's asking him questions about zakat. And then he says that the narrator said that we then left with this feeling of loss. He says because Abdullah bin Ja'far was not able to answer the questions correctly as per what we had learned and studied under Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So that's how we knew that Abdullah bin Ja'far cannot be the rightful Imam, because his verdict is not the same as that of his father. Right? So that's why he says we left with this feeling of loss. Although here there is a very important Zaydi critique that's also used here, which is to say that how do you know Abdullah bin Ja'far was not doing taqiyya? Because in the Imami narrative, the Imams purposely lie and they give verdicts, na'udhu billah, that agree with that of the mainstream Muslims. So perhaps Abdullah bin Ja'far did not trust Hisham ibn Salim, and so he's just giving him the wrong, false answer because he's doing taqiyya from him. So you can never know whether he's really the right Imam or the wrong Imam on the basis of this, because even the rightful Imams do taqiyya and give wrong answers.
Yeah, once you've opened up that door, once you've opened up that door, that's you have no way out of that argument. So anyone can make it, and a traditional Imami has no case against a Zaydi if he makes the argument.
Exactly, and then both the traditional Imami and the Zaydi would have no argument against the Ghali, John Andaluso, when he comes forward and he says, oh my God, the oppressed Bab of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Abu al-Khattab, Muhammad ibn Abi Zainab, he was teaching the real Imamology. He was teaching that Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam is the God of this earth, and that is the real teaching of Imam Ja'far. So wait a minute, Imam Ja'far denied that. We have the narrations of Zurara, of Muhammad ibn Muslim. I said, Baba, that is all taqiyya.
Well, there you go. The Imam, you have nothing on that. Exactly.
Do you see? But the important point here is that the narrator says that we left the meeting with a feeling of loss and did not know where to go. Wait a minute. I thought the Holy Prophet had identified all the 12 Imams. So why are these closest Shia of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and the earliest Salaf of the Imamiyah feeling this loss after the demise and departure of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam? And I and Abu Ja'far al-Ahwal were together, he says. We sat down on the corners of the city of Medina weeping and confused. You can see the confusion because there is no nas. Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam did not appoint a successor. He did not designate a successor because Hisham ibn Salim, remember, is one of the closest, he's one of the core Imamiyah. If he does not know who the next successor is, that can only mean one thing. No one else knows because a successor was not designated. So in any case, he says we were confused and did not know where to go and who should we go. And we were saying to each other, where should we go now? Should we go to the Murji'ah? Yani should we go and become part of the Ahlul Sunnah, the proto Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Okay, the mainstream Muslims. Should we go and join the Qadariyah? Should we join the Zaydiyyah? A lot of the 12ers and Imamiyahs, you can see Zaydiyyah has always been a choice on the menu that they consider as they're on their way out of Imamism.
The irony is in our time, that's what's happening as well.
A lot of 12ers.
A lot of 12ers are becoming Zaydi. So look at the irony. History repeats itself.
History repeats itself. So they're considering, should we join the Zaydiyyah? Because you see, now notice how this is the biggest proof. The fact that they are sitting in the streets of Medina and wondering to themselves, should we join the Murji'ah? Should we join the Qadariyah? Should we join the Zaydiyyah? Should we join the Mu'tazila? Or should we go and join the Khawarij? They're thinking of joining the Khawarij, Maulana. So why? Because they have realized that if there is no successor for Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, it's game over for the whole Imami theory that there would always be a hujjah of God on this earth. But now the issue is, Sayyid Raza, I want you to focus and ponder on one very key point here, is that Hisham ibn Salim, if you go into the books of Rijal, him and Sahib al-Taq, they are all praised as the predecessors of the Imamiyah. They're among the earliest Imamiyah, right?
Sahib al-Taq is the same guy that mashallah was teaching Imam Zayd religion, right?
Exactly. He was teaching him about divine Imamah.
Mashallah, yeah.
Yes. But then the issue is, Sayyid Raza, are you observing something here? These early Imamiyah, this is the biggest proof, this text that I'm just quoting in front of you, and which has been authenticated by the highest level of Rijali, 12er Imami Rijali scholarship. The proof is here, Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara and another chapter of Mu'jam al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara. They have authenticated these narrations. And what these narrations are showing you is that the early Imamiyah were not 12 verse. They had no concept of 12 Imams. How? Because if there were 12 verse,
you would say there has to be an Imam. They wouldn't say, let's go somewhere else. There has to be someone. Because we know it's the 12.
Yeah, Akhi, today's 12er, even though the 12th Imam is not in front of him, he's in Ghaiba, why does today's traditional 12er not go and join the Zaydiyyah or the Ahlus Sunnah or someone else? Because he says, I'm waiting for an Imam. Until that 12th Imam comes, I have to be part of his team. I have to be part of his sect, right? But notice how these early Imamiyah, as soon as they come to a conclusion that there is no proper Imam after Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, they don't say, wait a minute, we are 12ers. So there must be a 7th Imam. There are 6 more Imams to go. How can we give up? How can we give up after the 6th Imam? Okay, maybe Abdullah bin Ja'far has failed the test, but maybe some other son would be the rightful Imam. Or maybe something else is, maybe God is going to miraculously do something. I mean, we have been told by the Prophet that there will be 12 Imams.
100%. 100%.
But Sayyid, this is where you realize, this is why the learned Imamiyah, if you go and talk to them, so this is where the difference between the Juhal, the lay people, and the learned Imamiyah. Learned 12er Imamiyah will tell you, they will admit, they will say that all these texts that talk about 12 Imams, they are fabrications. There is no trace of them prior to Ghaiba. It's only after the 12ers and after the Shia al-Imamiyah fell into crisis, after the demise of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, that all these texts miraculously started popping up of 12 Imams and 12 Imams and 12 Imams. But in the pre-Ghaiba period, the early Imamiyah knew of no concept of 12 Imams. That's why after the demise of the 6th Imam, as soon as there is no Imam in sight, they say, okay, let's join the Zaydis, let's join the Mu'tazilis, let's join the Khawarij, let's join, because there is no point being an Imami now. There is no Imam coming to us.
Notice as well.
Whereas if there had been traditional Imamiyah of like today, they would be saying, no, we can't join the Murji'ah or the Qadariyah or the Zaydiyyah or Mu'tazila. There are 6 more Imams to go according to the Prophet, according to the Hadithul Lawh of Jabir, the Hadith of the tablet. Remember that tablet that Jabir received from Fatimah Zahra, in which the names of each of the 12 Imams are written? They would say the tablet mentions 12 Imams. How can we give up?
No concept. Doesn't exist. The concept doesn't exist yet. It hasn't been invented yet.
It hasn't been invented yet. It is not known to the closest. Remember, Hisham ibn Salim is not an outsider.
He might be doing, Hisham bin Salim might be doing taqiyya though.
Who, Hisham bin Salim is doing taqiyya?
Why not?
Who is he doing taqiyya from? The only one with him right now is Mu'min al-Taq, Sahib al-Taq. He would do taqiyya with his own fellow Imami?
You can do taqiyya with anyone. Imam Zain al-Abidin can do taqiyya with Imam Zayd.
Wow.
Anything can happen.
Basically, everyone's doing taqiyya. Even Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was doing taqiyya when he said, look, we don't have these divine powers and I'm not the God of this earth and everything is taqiyya. Then basically
everything's taqiyya until you become a shaykhi and you believe the Imams are basically God.
Exactly. So I hope you can go on with this. Inshallah, we'll share the link to this narration. It's authenticated by Ayatollah Muhsini, but throughout what you will see is that, you know, they are testing him on zakat, Abdullah bin Ja'far, okay? And here also you will see in this narration from Hisham ibn Salim, Ayatollah Muhsini authenticates how the very same thing, should we join the Murji'ah, Qadariyah, Mu'tazila, Zaydiyyah? We sat down on the streets of Medina with our heads lowered, not knowing where to head or whom to seek. We kept saying to ourselves, should we join the Murji'ah, the Qadariyah? Confusion, chaos.
Yeah, it's confusion and chaos. I think, and you mentioned about the word crisis. Sayyid Ammar should know these points, because I think Sayyid Ammar, one of his teachers is Dr. Madarasi, the one that has written crisis. I think he's in close relations, at least from memory. A reading of crisis would have made sure that Sayyid Ammar never ever made a point like that, because this just is a theologically warped narrative that has no basis historically, and our own Turath exposes the history on this issue. So to claim something like only the Prophet can tell you, when historically the companions do not have any idea about this concept, the companions of the Imams, supposedly of the Imams, they have no idea. So to claim the Prophet told them, this is just all theologically charged business. Again, We want the historical Imam Ali, we want the historical Ahlul Bayt, not the theologically charged one that we built up later underneath the guise of ghulu. Sayyid, are we done? Should we go to the next clip?
Yeah.
Next clip, moderator.
Question. When you differ over an issue, return it back to Allah and His Prophet. Why didn't it say return it back to Allah, the Prophet, and Ulil Amr? Why it stopped? It said return it back to Allah and His Prophet. Number one, Ulil Amr will never do anything that contradicts what the Risala says. But number two, more important, and the real tafsir, what is it? Ulil Amr are not the bringers of Sharia. They are protectors of Sharia. Someone said, if Ulil Amr were that high, then the ayah should say, when you dispute on something, take it to Allah, the Prophet, and Ulil Amr. No. If you have a dispute over something, you have to return it to the original source who bought that thing.
Yeah, so in these clips, like the viewers and the awam that are there, I really do like, there is a thing part of me that feels it, because, you know, all the wahwa and all of that, because the awam are not educated too much on these issues, I think that it just sounds nice. So it's like a nice soundbite. But if they were to actually deep and understand what they're saying, what they're basically praising, they would understand that it's contradiction. Let me explain. From what I understand, then you can give your thoughts. The whole claim of Imamah is what? That if there's any ikhtilaf, if there's any disputes, the Imams clarify it. The whole point of the Imami narrative is that the Imams will clarify and solve the disputes of the Ummah, and there won't be confusion. As we can see, all we can see is confusion, but that's besides the point. But they will solve the confusion. Now, when finally that time comes, we're like, no. The people that will solve the confusion is Allah Rasul. Then what's the point of Imamah then? You see what we're doing? We're doing circular reasoning here. We're saying we need the Imams to solve the confusion and all these disputes. Everyone's like, okay, now Imam, there's a confusion. Can you solve it? Allah saying, go back to Allah Rasul. You're saying, go back to the Imam. Allah saying, go back to Allah. So then, if you're going to go back to Allah Rasul anyway, that's what everyone's doing anyway. The Sunnis do that anyway. The Sunnis do that aslan anyway. The other sects of the Muslims do that anyway. So what's the point of Imamah?
Exactly. Because the traditional Imami narrative and claim is that the whole role, the whole function, the whole job of the Imams is to be there so that there should be no confusion after the Prophet is gone. Right? So after, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that whenever you have any disputes, return it to Allah and the Messenger. Okay, this is as far as the lifetime of the Messenger is concerned. After the Prophet is gone, if we have disputes, what do? This is where the Imami narrative comes and says that's why you have these 12 Imams who are qa'im maqam. They stand in the place of the Prophet and they occupy his position, and they're there to sort out all the disputes. They're the protectors of the Sharia, and they will sort out your disputes. They will give you the correct verdicts. But now the speaker is backtracking on this Imami narrative, and he's saying that no, Ulul Amr are actually useless as far as dispute resolution is concerned. We have to go to Allah and the Prophet. We cannot go to the Ulul Amr for dispute resolution.
That's what everyone
does. Isn't that what the whole Ummah does?
That's what everyone does anyway. So again,
then what's the benefit of Imamah then? If we can't go to them for dispute resolution, if we can't take our ikhtilafat to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, then what's the point of having the Imams of Ahlul Bayt?
It seems the point is to basically make a point and everyone says wahwa and not understand the point. That's what's left.
That is disappointing. I mean, because we are supposed to approach these topics academically and also be true to the sect that you're representing and the turath, the literary heritage of the sect that you're representing.
100%. But, Allah guide us all. Next clip, moderator.
Therefore, Imam Sadiq was asked, who are the Ulil Amr? He said, Ali and Hassan and Hussein. Listen, they said to him, but Imam, why is there not mentioned them clearly in this ayah? He said, Allah told us to pray salah, but never told us if it was 3 or 4 rak'ah. Allah told us to pay zakat. but never said how much. Allah told us to do tawaf, but never said how many times in the Quran. You're asking me, everything should be in Quran? Hajj, I do tawaf 7 times. Show me an ayah that says 7, oh Quranist only people. And someone says zakat is 2.5% or 1/40th. I say, show me an ayah that says next year pay 1/40.
So, I'll give a brief one on that. So, Aslan, the ayah of Ulul Amr, as we've established, is nothing to do with about the Imams and the concept of Imamah as the Shia claim. So that's just an irrelevant point in the first place. Second of all, as regards to the point of the number of rakat, percentage of zakat, you know, the number of tawaf, etc., number of tawaf in Hajj and all stuff, all of this is nothing to do with it being in the Quran or not. This is something that's been transmitted in tawatur amali by the ummah. No one does these things because there's a hadith in a book. This is transmitted by the ummah, by the amal of tawatur. These things are not clarified because, oh, the Quran's missed it, so therefore now, how do you do these things? Everyone knows these things because it's come as a practical tawatur that the Muslims have recognized generation after generation. It's undeniable, like the amal of al-Madinah on Sadr. We understand that concept there, don't we? We like using that there, now use it. So now understand this here as well. It's the practical amal that everyone understands. So using that point is irrelevant to this whole point that, oh, you know, you like to use it, you like to mention that it's not in the Quran, but the tawatur is there, so we don't need it. Said, anything you want to add to that? I don't think there's anything more to add to that.
Yeah, basically, the argument that he's trying to make is that as far as the Ulil Amr are concerned, they need to be designated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's stating that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said that Imam Ali alayhi salam was Ulil Amr and Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Well, we don't deny Imam Ali alayhi salam in the lifetime of the Holy Prophet was appointed as a leader of expeditions, military expeditions. He was appointed a judge during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was sent as the leader of the mission to Yemen. We don't deny any of that, right? But he was not the only one. Ulil Amr is a broad term. Anyone that is vested with power and authority by the Prophet ﷺ is among the Ulil Amr. And so if you look at the seerah of the Prophet, you will see that there were all kinds of people who were appointed to the position of Ulil Amr. And so that's at the first level. At the second level, this, a very common argument that's often made by traditional Imami 12 Shi'as is that when you ask them for proof of this Imamah or 12 Imams from the Quran, they immediately bring in Salah and number of rak'at is not mentioned, Zakat percentage is not mentioned, details of fasting is not mentioned. Why are you comparing apples and oranges? You are comparing Imamah, which is, you are claiming something that is part of the belief system, and Aqidah, you are claiming it to
Aqidah, not only Aqidah, Asl min al-Asul ad-Din. Yeah, you're saying it's next to Tawhid and Nabuwah. You're putting it there. Yeah,
exactly. You are claiming it as part of the belief system. Okay, so it's not just a number of rak'at and details of fiqh. Okay, these are not the core of Islam. These are not the core part of the Aqidah, right? So if you're gonna, it depends what you are claiming. If you're gonna put Imamah in the same list as Tawheed, in the same list as Risala, in the same list as Ma'ad, then I want the same kind of evidence for it that exists for Ma'ad and for Tawheed and for Risala. If you're going to put Imamah and Wilaya in the list of the nitty-gritties of fiqh, which are not part of, the requirement of Iman and requirement of Aqidah and being a Muslim and Mu'min, then I might relax the standard a little bit. But
even
first, tell me, what are you claiming?
But even the examples they're bringing, those examples that they're asking for, how about Salah, how about Tawaf, how about Zakat, these things have been transmitted by Tawatur in the Ummah.
Exactly.
Imamah hasn't, and the narration he's quoting about Imam Sadiq and saying that, again, anyone who studied the Imami Turath will know that actually in our own Turath, Imamah is a secret. Imamah is a secret with no 12 Imams names transmitted. In fact, the close companions, as you've just showed, didn't know who the Imams were. and the closest companions weren't aware. The own Prophet's family wasn't aware, like Imam Zayd wasn't aware of Imamah. So this is a closely transmitted secret with these special people, apparently, where the close companions don't know and the family members don't know. So therefore, to compare this and say, oh, well, you know, look at the Imams, then quote one hadith of Imam Sadiq, again, you have to match it with historical realities. And with historical realities, it's not matching up. Do you have any examples of this point, Sayyid, about the narrations on this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is also the argument of Imam Zayd alayhi salam. Is like, he's saying, you people are claiming divine imamah for my father and for my nephew, for Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. How come I didn't get the memo on this?
So what we want to show is we want to see an evidence where the Imam's denying his imamah.
Right. So look, this is we can show so much
to show what kind of taqiyya secret narrative this is, to show you it's a very secretive taqiyya narrative. And the other thing we want to see is like about, well, you showed about companions not knowing the next Imam, so I guess that does. The Imam Zayd one we've showed many times, so it's up to you how you want to do it.
Yeah, let me just show you what the learned traditional 12-hour Imami view is. This is Ar-Risalatu Thalitha fil Ghaiba, the third treatise by Shaykh al-Mufid on Ghaiba. And it has a very good introduction that's written by, so these are the publication details. It's the first edition, published in 1314 AH by the International Congress of Shaykh al-Mufid on the millennium anniversary of Shaykh al-Mufid. And so if you come here to the introduction that's written by Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Rida al-Husayni al-Jalali, he's summarizing the main arguments of Shaykh al-Mufid and the main stance of the Imamiyah. He says that as far as the Imams of the past, before Imam Sahib al-Zaman are concerned, it is known about them with certainty that number one, لا يتدينون بالقيام بالسيف, they do not rise with the sword. ولا يرون الدعاء إلى أنفسهم, and aslan they do not believe in calling to their own Imam. So do you understand why now the claim that Imams, the whole reason why Imamah is not mutawatir in the Ummah, just like number of rak'at of salah and percentage of zakat, all of these things are mutawatir because the Prophet transmitted this to the companions and the Ahlul Bayt, and from them it reached all the Muslims. But as far as the Imamah of the 12 Imams is concerned, it would never be
both by knuckle and amal.
Yes, both by knuckle and amal.
Yes,
but
very
as far
good.
as the Imamah of the Imams is concerned, aslan the Imams never called to their own Imamah. As far as the mainstream Ummah is concerned, they were living in Medina in the presence of thousands of Muslims. They never went to the Muslims and said, look, Allah has appointed us as Imams, so come and follow us and take the Sunnah from us. They did say, take the Sunnah from us because we are grandchildren of the Prophet and we have very clean chains connecting us to the Prophet. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was the closest to the Prophet. So we have a very good sense of what the Sunnah was like. So if you want to learn that, welcome. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam used to teach anyone who used to come to his class, whether it be Zaydi, whether it be an Ibadi or Khariji or a proto-Sunni. He was welcoming everyone, but he never claimed. And you see, this is written by Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Rida al-Husayni al-Jalali, who is among the learned muhaqqiqeen. And editors of the books of the Turaf of the Imamiyah.
So he's accepted that Imams were not claiming towards it. There you go.
They were not calling towards. Why? Because he says, وَأَنَّهُمْ مُلْتَزِمُونَ بِالتَّقِيَّةِ, because they are bound by the secrecy of taqiyya. So they can't invite anyone to themselves. So apparently, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appointed them to call people towards the truth, but their circumstances did not permit it. So they did not call people towards themselves, but somehow the people will still die a death of jahiliyyah and they will still go to hell for not accepting the imamah of Imams who never really announced their imamah. To forget about the ummah, they didn't announce it to the likes of Hisham ibn Salim. They didn't tell them who the next imam was going to be, to Sahib al-Taq, until they had to sit confused in the streets of Medina and be like, should we join the Zaydiyyah? Should we join the Murji'ah? Should we go here? Should we go there?
And according to this, also the other narrative, at least the narration, where the Imams deny their imamah.
But this is, I showed you the scholarly view to show you that this is agreed upon and established as far as the scholarship is concerned. Okay, the muhaqqiqeen of the 12-hour Imamiyah will not dispute us as far as this claim is concerned.
The reason why I'm looking for this is because I want to show an example of the Imams basically denying the Imamah in front of the Shia as well. So we've got the concept of them basically not telling people and it being a secret kind of thing, but also them denying it publicly as well.
Yes, we actually have narrations in the corpus, the 12-bar Imami corpus, which explicitly have Imams denying their own Imamah and divine mandate and negating the claim of people in Kufa that obedience to them has been made obligatory by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here you have Al-Kafi by Shaykh Al-Kulayni, volume 1, page 232. You have Babu ma 'inda al-a'immati min silahi Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam wa mata'ih. This is the first narration of that bab, and it's also available accessible on the Thaqalain library, Al-Kafi, volume 1, chapter 38, the armaments and sacred items belonging to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that transferred to the Imam alayhi salam. Hadith number 1, narrated by Sayed Ammar. قال كنت عند أبي عبد الله عليه السلام إذ دخل عليه رجلان من الزيدية فقالا له أفيكم إمام مفترض الطاعة؟ فقال لا. فقال له قد أخبرنا عنك الثقات أنك تفتي وتقر وتقول به ونسميهم لك فلان وفلان وهم أصحاب ورع وتشمير وهم ممن لا يكذب. فغضب أبو عبد الله عليه السلام فقال ما أمرتهم بهذا. So basically, Sa'id al-Samman has said, I was in the presence of Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam. When two people from the Zaydiyyah sect came to him, they asked, is there with you, or actually among you, the Ahlul Bayt, an Imam, obedience to whom is obligatory? It has been made wajib by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can see the response of the Imam, Sayyid Raza. The narrator has said that the Imam alayhi salam said, no, there is no one as such among us, basically. There is no one among the Ahlul Bayt whose obedience Allah has made obligatory. Naturally, if there was a divinely appointed Imam, his obedience would be obligatory. But the Imam is denying this. Then they said, the Zaydiyyah said, but they are reliable people, and they're referring to people in Kufa, the Salaf of the Imamiyah. They are reliable people in Kufa who have informed us about you that you issue fatwas claiming your own Imamah, and that you affirm your own this idea that obedience to you is obligatory, and that you speak of it. We can point out their names or what their names are. They are very pious and alert people, or they've translated it as alert, but wara'in wa tashmir, yani they're very active in worship, and they're basically good people who are saying this about you. They are such that their claim cannot be rejected, or they themselves cannot be rejected. The Imam alayhi salam at this point became angry, and he said, I have not ordered them to say so. Yani if they are claiming that obedience to me is obligatory, and that it has been made obligatory by Allah because of my divine appointment or my infallibility, then I have not ordered them to say so. Okay, in Rijal al-Kashi, the Imam even says, فَمَا ذَنْبِي? If I did not order them and they're claiming this on their own initiative, then what is my fault? How is that my sin? So when these two Zaydi men noticed anger from the face of the Imams, they left. And then basically the conversation goes on to the claim of the Zaydiyyah that Abdullah ibn al-Hasan has the armaments and the sword of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and what the description of that is. And somehow this Imami narrator then tries to make that a sign that because Abdullah bin Hasan does not have that sword, and because it's with the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, therefore he must be the Imam.
And this is what if you look at Ammar Dodoni, he actually concludes, I conclude from the example that it was the practice of the Imams to present two faces dependent on the audience. They would consciously speak of these things to those who were in on it and deny it to strangers whose intentions they did not ascertain. This would happen in the presence of the companions who were aware of this game. That's the exact statement of Ammar. So he's admitting this is the narrative.
Our Imams were playing games. Playing
games. Essentially playing games. This is the narrative. So we've got concept of the Imams denying the Imamah, and guess what? Did they deny it to the Nawasib? The narration says, and by the way, he mentions Ammar. This narration I've quoted. It's an Al-Kafi and Rijal Kashi. He's quoted the Rijal Kashi one. and he's authenticated the sanad here as well in the article. This is from the article that the Imams praise Abu Bakr Umar, by the way, and someone wants to check it on his website. The two people that came to Imam Sadiq, they were from the Zaydiyyah.
Yeah, so how but then when you go to the 12 Imam Turath, you see the contradiction. Huh? There are so many curses that are leveled at the Zaydiyyah. How can you curse the Zaydiyyah for not accepting the Imamah of these Imams, when the reality is that when they do show up in front of these Imams and say that are you claiming that your obedience is obligatory and that you are the Imams say, no, we have never claimed this. But the people of Kufa are claiming this. The Imam says, so if the people are claiming, then how is that my fault? So the Imam denies his own Imamah to their face, and so somehow these Zaydiyyah still are cursed by Allah for not accepting the Imam of the time. How does that work?
And these Zaydiyyah are not
unjust. Like I came to you, let's say you are a divinely appointed Imam. I came to you and I asked you point blank, are you really the Imam appointed by Allah and obligatory obedience is due to you? And you say no. And then when I go away and I preach this, you tell me, may Allah curse you because you denied my Imamah. Well, Baba, I denied it because you yourself denied it.
So I think we've
and remember, Zaydiyyah are not mukhalif, they are not nawasib.
That's my point. The Zaydiyyah are not. That's my whole point was they're pro-Ali. They have to show you in them. They're not nawasib.
Yeah. So if Imam were to claim his Imamah, they would accept.
There you go. So I think that's kind of hammered home. We know that it's a whole cult secret. So to say Imam Sadiq said about Imams historically, it doesn't work. Next clip, moderator.
Exactly, and that's why you can see even the name of the bab is preserving the secret of the Prophet's family. So the Imami narrative, this is in Kitab al-Ghaiba. So the Imami narrative is that the Imamah of the Imams and their divine appointment is a closely guarded secret that remains within the family. It is not to be shared with the Ummah.
No, not even the family. Even the Imam Zayd doesn't know either.
Sorry.
Not family.
Yeah. It's only to be shared with the elite Imamiyah predecessors. Even though with them it's not shared with all the predecessors. As we saw, Hisham ibn Salim, Sahib al-Taq, they don't know who the Imam is after Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam.
Confusion upon confusion. Moderator, next clip.
Then Imam As-Sadiq does something wonderful in how he turns this around. He says, but has Allah not shown you enough signs? What do you mean, O Imam? He said, Ghadeer was not enough for you to know who the next leader was.
Ya Ali. So, Ya Ali without the istighatha, yeah? That was just
a slogan.
Yeah, slogan. Slogans we deal with the slogans, we don't deal with the nida al-talab. Point that he made about Ghadeer. Again, we have discussed Ghadeer. We're going to discuss it in a separate lecture, but I just don't see the relevance to, at most Ghadeer would have some sort of proof for Imam Ali. I don't really see the proof for the rest of the Imams, so I don't really see the relevance in that anyway.
Yeah, and even for Imam Ali alayhi salam, if you go to the learned scholarship, for example, if I can showcase here before you, we have this Ash-Shafi, Kitab Ash-Shafi fil Imamah by Ash-Sharif Murtada Ali ibn al-Husayn al-Musawi, Alam al-Huda, died 436, one of the greatest.
Sayed Razi's brother.
Yeah, one of the greatest polemicists, if you like, and one of the greatest scholars of the Shia al-Imamiyya al-Ithnay Ashariya 12ers. So this is his book, and it is the tahqiq is by Sayyid Abd Zahra al-Hussein al-Khatib. It has been revised and edited by Sayyid Fadil al-Milani as well. And this is basically volume 2. If you come to page 67, he talks about, Sharif Murtada talks about Nassul al-Jali, explicit text, okay, for appointment, and he talks about An-Nassul Khafi. Nassul Khafi is implicit. So, as far as hadith of Man Kuntu Mawlah fa Aliyun Mawlah is concerned, or as far as
can you increase the size on the thing?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
So he says, look, the other kind of nas or other kind of statement of the Prophet, لا نقطع على سامعيه من الرسول صلى الله عليه وآله علم النص بالإمامة منه اضطرارا. He says there are certain texts that we have from the Prophet for which we cannot say with certainty that those who heard this text coming out of the mouth of the Prophet would have immediately understood it to mean a divine appointment. Rather, it is entirely possible, as far as conceivable, as far as we are concerned, that it would require a lot of derivation in order to get from that text to the whole issue of divine appointment. You need a lot of derivation, istidlal. So he says that فَأَمَّا نَحْنُ فَلَا نَعْلَمْ ثُبُوتَهُ وَالْمُرَادْ بِهِ إِلَّا اسْتِدْلَالًا. So those are texts from the Prophet that we cannot determine what their meaning is except by engaging in complex deduction and derivation. And he says, what are those texts which we classify as nass khafi, as implicit recommendations or appointments? أنت مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى إلا أنه لا نبي بعدي. Hadith al-Manzila. That, oh Ali, you are to me as Harun was to Musa, except that there is no prophet after me. And the hadith, وَمَنْ كُنْتُ مَوْلَاهُ فَعَلِيٌّ مَوْلَاهُ. Whosoever's Mawla I am, Ali is his Mawla. He says, look at this, وَهَذَا الضَّرْبْ مِنَ النَّصْ هُوَ الَّذِي يُسَمِّيهِ أَصْحَابُنَا النَّصْ الْخَفِيِّ. This is the kind of text that our ashab, the people of our sect, the scholars of our sect, the Shia, Al-Imamiyya, Al-Ithnay Ashariya sect, they call this nass khafi, the hidden, the veiled, implicit text. So Sharif Murtaba, Alamul Huda, page 67, volume 2, is admitting that Hadithul Ghadeer, you see, the layperson thinks Hadithul Ghadeer is slam dunk divine appointment of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But
They
if
don't
you
understand,
learned traditional 12-hour Imamiyya scholarship, they will tell you, no, Hadithul Ghadeer is not qat'iyyud dalala. It does not give us certainty about what the Prophet meant with it, because the language that the Prophet used is open to multiple varieties of interpretation. There is no one clear interpretation that you can push as being the decisive and definitive interpretation. You need to engage in a lot of deduction, derivation, I would argue even a lot of acrobatics and somersaults and Olympic level gymnastics to get to your conclusion which you want to push as part of your sect. But the text in itself, you cannot immediately derive from it. That's number one. And number two, Imam Ali alayhi salam never used it for this purpose. But that's an argument we'll make some other time, inshallah.
That's for our Ghadeer special, inshallah, coming soon, coming soon. Moderator, next clip.
You cannot tell a Shia that Ali was not leader, because we believe he was announced not after Islam, but during Islam. And if he's announced during Islam, that means Khilafah is no longer a political issue. It is a aqaidi religious issue.
Here, what he's mentioned is that Imam Ali was appointed during the Prophet's time, so it's not political. Basically, the mafhum is he's appointed during the Prophet's time, so it's not political, it's a religious issue. That's the gist of his argument. Sayyid Ustadh, your thoughts?
So Khalid bin Walid, Usama bin Zayd, Attab bin Usayd, Ma'ad bin Jamal, these are all appointments that were made during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are we going to now argue that this is also supposed to be part of our aqidah? Their appointment was a religious issue?
No, only for Imam Ali.
No, but then if you're going to argue appointments that were made during the time of the Prophet have a certain degree of a halo of sanctity associated with them, then the Prophet ﷺ appointed so many other non-infallibles.
It doesn't matter. For us, we're just going to take the Imam Ali one.
Okay, so then don't frame your argument as it being that because the Prophet made the appointment during his lifetime, it is therefore somehow special. The Prophet made so many other appointments in his lifetime. Why are you not treating them as special? I mean, you understand this argument is completely flawed. First of all, we already established that the appointment that they're claiming was implicit. It was an implicit recommendation, not an official appointment. And that is acknowledged by the highest level sectarian scholarship, such as Sharif Murtada. But the second point is that the Holy Prophet appointed many people for many different tasks. Is believing in those appointments also an aqaidi issue? Yani, as part of my aqidah and usuluddin, I also have to believe in the appointment of Khalid bin Walid and Usama bin Zayd and Mu'adh bin Jabal, all of these, Attab bin Usayd, every single person. Abdullah bin Maktoum, the Prophet appointed him governor of Medina when he was going for certain expeditions himself. So I'm supposed to believe in all of these as my ulul amr, and that is supposed to be part of my usuluddin and aqidah.
That doesn't really suit the sect's argument, so we can't use that. We're only going to use it for Imam Ali.
Okay, so if you want to be sectarian, be my guest.
Yeah. That's it. There's nothing I can say.
So that's our whole claim. Don't be sectarian. Be the real Shia of Imam Ali.
That's the whole point. Be the real Shia. Let's no more smoke. And as far as I think that's pretty much done. Moderator, next clip.
Number 2, Imam then continued by saying, not just that. Is it not enough that the Prophet said, I leave behind for you the Quran and my Ahlul Bayt? Is that not enough for you that you went and chose others when Al Muhammad were there? Al Muhammad were with the Quran. How could you go and choose others when they are the ones who are protecting the Quran? Because the Khalifa of Muhammad has the same role. He has to protect Allah's law on earth. He has to protect Allah's Quran on earth and the teachings of the Quran on the earth. That's the role of the Khalifa, correct?
This one, I'm going to take this one, Said, because this one, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so this one, very good. We believe that the Itra, the Ahlul Bayt, we are Shia of Ali, 100%. We have a political view that Imam Ali should have been the first Khalifa. It would have been better, we believe, overall. No doubt, we are Shia of Ali, no issue. But it's a political belief. It's nothing to do with deen. It's nothing to do with Asul al-Deen. It's nothing to do with, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah's going to ask you about it. It's just a political reference. So we are, that much we deal with. But it's not an issue of Aqidah or anything like that. However, the point that he made about the Ahlul Bayt and the Khalifa and their job was to protect the Quran and stuff like that. My first question to Sayed Ammar on this issue is a very direct question. If that is the case and that is the role, why have Shia Imamiyya scholarship believed in Tahrif al-Quran?
Tahrif al-Quran, corruption of the text of the Quran and alteration.
Shia Imamiyya scholarship, let me be clear. Why has Shia Imamiyya scholarship in the past, many of them, believed in Tahrif al-Quran? Are we saying that Imam Ali didn't do his job then?
I think that's what you're implying. If you say that because as the speaker mentioned, the role of the Imams is to protect the Quran. But then the Shia scholarship, the traditional 12-ver Imami Shia scholarship comes and says that the Quran was not protected. The Quran got distorted, it got altered, it got reduced. The original Quran had 17,000 verses, as the narration in Al-Kafi claims. And the Quran that we have today has only 6,000 odd verses left in it. So that means the Quran got altered, it got significantly reduced from its original size. So now if the speaker is going to say that the Imam's role is to protect the Quran, but the traditional scholarship is used to say, especially for centuries, the Akhbari scholarship maintained this, that the Quran got corrupted and tahrif happened, then low-key what they were suggesting was that Imam Ali alayhi salam and the rest of the Imams did not do their job.
So
what their job was to protect the Quran and prevent tahrif from happening.
So again, look, it sounds nice. When you practically break things down, things don't add up. And it just sounds nice and fluffy. But when you get down to practical realities, this is not what's been happening historically. This is not what's been happening. If we believe that Ahlul Bayt did protect the Quran because the Quran is protected, and alhamdulillah, many Shia today do believe, and I said many Shia do believe the Quran is protected now and etc. But however, this narrative historically, many Shia scholars did believe the Quran, astaghfirullah, has corruption in it, has been corrupted. So to say that the Ahlul Bayt's job was that, but then your own learned scholars are saying the opposite, just mess upon mess, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but I want to answer like you. The question that he posed first is that how come when the Imams, when the Itra, when the Ahlul Bayt are there, how can you choose someone else? And our response to that is that if we were part of that early community, we would have not chosen anyone. So long as there are viable candidates from the family of the Prophet, our preference and our love and our loyalty and our support and our alliance would be with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam first and foremost. As long as they were there, we would not have chosen anyone else. So that's our personal stance. But this personal stance is our personal preference. We would not insert this into the deen. We would not make this personal preference of the early Shia part of the usul-ud-din or part of religion. Because when you do that, you know what happens? You end up doing takfir of the entire ummah, which is what your sect has been doing for centuries.
Our scholarship has been doing takfir of the ummah. That's exactly
So I
what
have a whole doctoral dissertation that was submitted to me about takfir in Imami literature. It's a whole doctoral dissertation at Al-Azhar University that shows you how much takfir. People think Salafis, Wahhabis are big on takfir. My God, if you read the takfir in the classical and medieval Shia 12-hour Imami sources, and even in some contemporary writings of scholars who are influenced by that fabricated and by that dark web of Turath, you will see really the kind of takfir that will give you goosebumps. And this results when you mix politics with religion. It's okay for you to have your political preferences and your political choices. We also have them. We are openly saying here that we were there in the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam. For the first 6 months, we would be with him, not giving bay'ah to anyone. But then after Imam Ali alayhi salam himself goes and gives bay'ah to Abu Bakr, as is established in both Shia and Sunni sources, then would the speaker ask Imam Ali this question? Because his question was, how can you give bay'ah to the Sahaba when Ahlul Bayt are there? Well,
ask Ali. Ask Ali. Ask Imam Ali this. Why
ask
did
Imam Ali why he gave bay'ah. Ask Imam Hussein alayhi salam why in his letter to the people of Basra is he legitimizing and praising Hazrat Abu Bakr and Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhuma. Why is he praising them if they were usurpers?
Very good. Moderator, next clip.
Then he said in number 3, you think that the names had to be mentioned? Was it not enough? إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على.
This Sayyid Ustad, this is now Quran. This is your ayah. Take it away.
Right. So Ayatul Tathir, actually, the mistake that has been made by the sectarian Shia is they have taken the irada of Allah that's mentioned in this ayah, right? Innama yuridullah. Allah only wants to, Allah only wishes to, and wills to purify you, O Ahlul Bayt, with a complete purification. They have taken this irada, unfortunately and mistakenly, erroneously, to mean irada takwiniya. As in Allah will do this Allah will do it as part of his qada and qadar and as part of his takwini law. Yani he is going to do this. Okay. Whereas what Allah means here actually is irada tashri'iyya. Yani the legislative irada. So you need to understand Allah has two iradas. One is his takwini irada, that's like his qada and qadar. Something that Allah determines and decides to be done, so it gets done. That's the kun fayakun, right? Allah says be and it becomes. So they're taking it to mean that because Allah wants them to be purified, he will just say be purified and they will automatically become purified without any effort of their own. Just by Allah's purifying them, they will become pure. If you take this interpretation, the Ahlul Bayt lose all their value and all their credit goes away because they become pure and sinless because Allah automatically with a magic wand or with kun fayakun automatically made them this way. So now if Imam Ali alayhi salam is staying away from sins, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is staying from sins, no credit to him. Because he's like an angel. He's like a computer. Allah has automatically made him such. He has purified him in such a way that he cannot commit any sins. So there is no taqwa needed. There is no ma'rifah needed. He is born that way. And Allah has willed for him to be purified. So aslan, he cannot commit a sin or a mistake even if he wants to. It's like he doesn't even have the free will because Allah has purified him as a divine decree. Do you understand? But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually is saying is not irada takwiniya, it is irada tashri'iyya. Allah is showing you the legislative irada. What is legislative irada? It is exactly the same irada that Allah talks about in Surah 5 verse number 6. After revealing the verse of wudu, Allah says the same thing about the rest of the Muslims who are being asked to do wudu. No one is going to argue verse of wudu is only for Ahlul Bayt. It's for the whole ummah, right? Look at how after giving the command for wudu, Allah says, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ. O Muslims, O followers of this Quran, Allah does not desire to place you in any difficulty or hardship by prescribing the laws of wudu. وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ. But he desires, he wishes, he wills to purify you. Is any Imamiyah going to argue that Allah saying that I wish to purify you means that the entire ummah is now purified and ma'soom, and they cannot commit sins, they cannot commit any mistakes, because
Over there we
Allah
take it.
also said yuridu liyutahhirakum, just as he said for Ahlul Bayt, yuridu Allahu liyudhiba
Over there.
ankum al-rijs.
Over there we'll take it tashri, over here we'll take it taqween.
No, but the language is the same. How can you say takweeni here, tashri'i there?
Us, we're gonna do what we have to do in it.
No. So basically, this is the mistake that they made. They first made the irada of Allah takweeniya instead of tashri'iyya. Once you make this mistake and you start using it to prove isma, then you will have to exclude the entities for whom this verse was revealed. If you look at the context of this verse,
you mentioned everything. I was gonna say, let's get to the why are we even assuming this verse is only for the 5 anyway, or even the 12. Let's get down to the actual siyaq.
This verse is not even a full verse. It's a small segment in a larger verse. Surah 33, verse 33. People call it Ayatul Tathir. Baba, it starts وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. Allah is throughout the passage addressing the wives consistently from beginning to end. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. Stay within your houses. وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Do not come out the way you used to come out ostentatiously during the Jahiliyyah. وَأَقِمْنَا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتِينَا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَطِعْنَا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. Establish the prayer, give the zakat, obey Allah and the Messenger. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمْ الْبَيْتِ. Now Allah tells these wives of the Prophet, He's telling them the whole reason why I'm prescribing such laws for you. Because if you look at the previous passage, Allah has prescribed some quite tough laws for them. They're not allowed to leave their houses. Their very movement is being regulated by Allah. And Allah is saying you cannot speak to non-mahrams except from behind a screen. And you can't do this and you can't do that. So all of these do's and don'ts and this whole context, even the verse after Surah 33, verse 33 is about the wives. Verse 33. And then verse 34 is also about the wives. وَاذْكُرْنَ مَا يُتْلَى فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. The whole passage is about the wives of the Prophet. And because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in the ayah of wudu is tough legislation. Under normal circumstances, you may find it easy. But living in the UK, especially in the winter, I imagine getting up in the middle of the night to do wudu. Sometimes you don't have cold water. You don't have hot water, sorry. You have to do it with cold water. It's a difficult legislation. So that's why whenever Allah gives difficult legislation, He tries to cool things down, and He tries to console you by telling you, as He does in the ayat of wudu, Allah says, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُم. Look, I don't want to make life difficult for you. Rather, I desire to purify you. The purpose of wudu is to bring purity into your life. Similarly, after prescribing very tough legislation, regulating the movement of the wives of the Prophet, regulating their interactions with non-mahram men, after giving all of this tough legislation, Allah says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ. Allah is only doing this not because He wants to make life difficult for you, but rather, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ. Allah desires to keep filth away from you. وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. And Allah desires to purify you with a complete purification.
Your actions.
But that's His desire, that's His vision, that's His
vision.
intent.
And you achieve that by following what He's telling you to do.
Yes, it doesn't mean Allah will wave a magic wand over you and all of a sudden you will become purified. No, Allah is showing you, this is my vision. You have to work to achieve it. And the way to achieve it is by following the tough legislation that I'm prescribing for you.
The Zubda it's awwalan about the wives, because we've made it into a concept of isma, which the verse has nothing to do with. We need to exclude the wives, especially because maybe wives are in there who we definitely, the Shia historically have some sort of issue with, so we can't fathom that. So we say it can't be about them because it means isma. So we've imposed it, taken the people out who Allah intended, and said it's only about the 12 Imams, and made it about isma. Completely Harif of the Quran in terms of understanding it. Next verse, moderator.
What do I have now? I now have obey Allah, obey the Prophet. Why? Allah is the all-knowledgeable. He gave the ilm to Muhammad. Obey Allah, obey the Prophet. Allah never makes a mistake. He gave that isma to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alih. I also have that Rasulullah is appointed by Allah. That means whoever the ulil amr are have to be appointed by Allah, have to have the knowledge given from Allah, have to be ma'soom according to ayat al-tathir. Therefore I've got imamah, nubuwwah and tawheed in one ayah of the Quran.
Whoa. Whoa. Because we're breaking down each point. Obviously this looks very weird for us, but the crowd, I'm imagining the crowd's on cloud 9 right now. But for us, because we're breaking down each point, it's like, what? How did you get there? You haven't established nothing yet. How have we got all the way there yet? Anything to add to say? Because we've been breaking it down throughout, so he's just putting it all together. But like we've been talking, it hasn't been, even the foundations haven't been established, let alone Isma.
Yeah, I mean, this is just repeating what he said previously. We already established that ulul azm are not infallible. And that's the whole reason why Allah allows you to challenge them, to critique them, to dispute with them. And in the event of a dispute, you take your dispute back to Allah and the Messenger, and the ulul amr are excluded from the dispute resolution process because there is a potential and a chance of them being part of it.
Very good. Next verse, moderator. Next clip.
Every prophet said, my ajr is there. One prophet said, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا. All I want from you is one thing, is I want mawadda fil qurba. I want you to show love for my near ones. My near ones, that's it. No one else, those qurba of mine. Yes, and you know how many times they try to change the tafsir of this ayah?
Okay, I'm not sure that the ayah said you can deal with the Arabic in terms of understanding of the ayah, but in terms of the mafhum and what he's saying, in terms of loving the Prophet's family, and that being a hukum from the Prophet, 100% we're Shia of Ali. We don't, no way do we deny that. In fact, we affirm it, and we invite the ummah to benefit from the Prophet's family and love them, because that is the essence, and that is what the Prophet instructed us to do. Now, as far as the ayah is concerned, Sayyid, if you've got any thoughts on it, you can give it.
Right. So it's not that they tried to alter the tafsir of the ayah. The ayah in itself is not a slam dunk. If you look at it from the point of view of Arabic, it would be very slam dunk if the ayah said, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي قُرْبَاي. You know, I do not ask you for any ajr except that you show love and mawadda, mutual reciprocal love to my qurba, to my near relatives. If the Prophet had been instructed to say my, I think there would be no scope for any other interpretation. But the ayah says إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى, which means I ask you to show mawadda and love to the qurba. So this is where the Muslim exegetes, they said, okay, which qurba is being talked about here? So some people said, well, it could be the Prophet's qurba. Others said, well, it could be the fact that the Prophet is preaching to the kuffar. He's telling them that, look, I'm not asking you for any payment for the da'wah that I'm giving to you. I'm actually saving you from hell, but I'm not asking you for any reward. The only reward I'm asking you is to respect the kinship that you have with me, because the kuffar and mushrikeen of Makkah were basically Quraysh, and they had ties of kinship to the Prophet. So some Mufassirin, when they read this verse, they thought, okay, this verse could mean that the Prophet in Makkah is telling them, because you see, in Surah Shura is revealed in Makkah. In Makkah, you don't have much of the Ahlul Bayt. You have Imam Ali alayhi salam, you have Bibi Fatima, but you don't have Hassan Hussein. You don't have a very strong concept of Ahlul Bayt in Makkah. But you do have this concept that the Holy Prophet is connected to the Quraysh by ties of kinship. So it's like the Prophet is saying that, look, if you're not even going to accept my da'wah, at least don't persecute me. At least respect the ties of kinship that bind you to me. So I wouldn't say that this was an invented or altered interpretation. It is a genuine thought that occurred to the exegetes. We accept, obviously, as far as we are concerned, we have no issue with the interpretation that you take it to mean the qurba of the Prophet, but this is something that the Ummah also is willing to accept. You look at Imam Shafi'i, for example, in beautiful lines of poetry attributed to him. He says, Ya Ahla Bayti Rasulillahi, Hubbukum fardun min Allahi fil Qur'ani anzala, yakfikum min azim al-fakhri, aw azim al-sha'ni, annahu man lam yusalli alaykum la salata lahu. He says, oh family of the Prophet, your love is a fard. It is an obligation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He revealed in the Quran. And obviously He's referring to Ayatul Mawaddah. He's referring to this verse. So even Sunnis have understood this verse to mean that yes, it could mean also showing love to the family of the Prophet.
Because the narrations because we've got both narrations that state both things, so it can go either way.
Yeah. So
that's just the ilmi bahath on it. Regardless, the overall thought process, which is loving the Ahlul Bayt, no one denies that apart from Nawasib.
Exactly. You can see Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahli Sunnati wal Jama'ah, teacher of Imam Ahmad, who is himself Imam Ahli Sunnati wal Jama'ah. He is saying that we believe that loving the family of the Prophet is fardun min Allahi fil Qur'ani anzala. It is fard revealed by Allah in the Quran. And then he says, O Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet, yakfikum min azim al-fakhri wa shan. It is sufficient for your glory and your grandeur and your majesty and greatness that annahu man lam yusalli alaykum la salata lahu, that whosoever does not send salutations on you, does not invoke the salawat of Allah upon you in salah, la salata lahu. Imam Shafi'i is speaking here as a faqih, as a jurist. He says his salah is invalid. But yeah, I don't get any Nare Haydaris from you, Sayyid Raza.
You won't get no Nare Haydari, but you'll get Imam Shafi will get Rahmatullah alayh. But you got Imam Shafi. You got Imam Shafi.
Great lover of Ahlul Bayt.
You got Imam Shafi Rahmatullah alayh. That's it. All right. Moderator, next clip. And I think that's the last clip.
Mawla says in Nahjul Balagha, there are 3 sermons I want you to all read. 164, 152, and 97. What does he say? We are the vicegerents of Allah on earth. We are the vicegerents of Allah on earth. Sometimes people say, Mawla never said he's chosen by... Listen to what he says. We are the vicegerents of Allah on earth. Adhere to our directions. Follow our footsteps. When we stand, you stand. And when we sit, you sit. Makes that clear. That we are the ones chosen by Allah. Whoever recognizes us goes to Jannah. Whoever rejects us goes to Jahannam.
Okay, Sayyid. So this is Nahjul Balagha. This is your territory. Those khutbahs, I'm sure you're aware of those 3 khutbahs and the matan, etc. and the tafsir. Take it away, Sayyid.
Okay. Well, 164 is basically a converse. This is word 164. I hope you can see it.
Yeah.
Is it clear?
Yeah, I can see it.
164 is basically when people went to Amir al-Mu'mineen in a deputation and complained to him through what they had to say against Uthman. And they requested him to speak to him on their behalf and to admonish him for their sake. So this is basically a conversation between Imam Ali alayhi salam and Uthman, and it does not have what the speaker is claiming. In fact, I'm glad he mentioned this because it shows you, this sermon actually shows you, or this speech of Imam Ali shows you what Imam means in the terminology of Imam Ali alayhi salam. You see, today the lay Shia, as soon as he hears the word Imam or Imam Ali saying the word Imam, he thinks 12 Imams, right? Look at Imam Ali's vocabulary. He's addressing Uthman and he's saying, وَإِنِّي أَنْشُدُكَ اللَّهَ أَن تَكُونَ إِمَامَ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ الْمَقْتُولِ فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ يُقْتَلُ فِي هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ إِمَامٌ يَفْتَحُ عَلَيْهَا الْقَتْلِ وَالْقِتَالِ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. He says, I swear to you by Allah. Main qasam deta hu Allah ki. Okay? In English, it doesn't really make sense. I swear to you by Allah. He's saying, Yani, I ask you in the name of Allah. I plead with you in the name of Allah that you should not be the Imam of the people who will be killed. Yani, you shouldn't be that Imam who the people are going to kill, because it has been said, it has been prophesied that an Imam of this people will be killed, after whose killing fighting will be made open for them until the day of judgment. Yani, his killing is going to result in civil war. So notice how Imam Ali alayhi salam is accepting Uthman as an Imam, and he's pleading with him that, look, I don't want you to be the Imam for whom it was said and prophesied that the Prophet had mentioned apparently to Imam Ali alayhi salam that there is going to be an Imam who is going to be killed, and after he is killed, civil wars will emerge. And you can see what Imam Ali alayhi salam was fearing actually came true, because Uthman actually is the Imam here.
It's the turning point. After Uthman's death, that's the turning point. After that, it's never the same after that.
It's never the same, man. Even sectarianism.
It's never the same after
say it's a turning point for sectarianism in Islam.
So Uthman, Ali, Muawiyah, To this day, these disputes, discussions we have with Sunnis, sometimes Shia Uthman, sometimes Shia Muawiyah, it's all to do with this stuff.
Exactly. So, but in any case, what the speaker was saying is not to be found anywhere in 164. But we can go to another sermon, which I think he was referring to. So 152 does have a section. Okay, so it starts with the sifat of Allah and the sifat of the Imam of the Deen. And then there is a section here, a leader, a part of the same sermon about the divine leaders, the Imams, A'immatud Deen. Okay. And so this is where we awaited these changes as the family, certainly the Imams. So he says, certainly the Imams are the vicegerents of Allah over his creatures. And they make the creatures know Allah. Now he says the Imams are the vicegerents of Allah. He doesn't say we are the vicegerents of Allah. Okay,
Yes.
so critical. That's a critical point to keep in mind.
Yeah, point to be noted.
He says, وَإِنَّمَا الْأَئِمَّةُ قُوَّامُ اللَّهِ عَلَى خَلْقِهِ. This is the Arabic. And I'm glad that he mentioned the previous sermon that we were looking at, 164, which shows you what Imam means in the vocabulary of Imam Ali. In the vocabulary of Imam Ali alayhi salam, an Imam, even Uthman is an Imam. That's why he's saying, look, I'm pleading with you. I don't want you to be the Imam of this Ummah who will be killed. Because there is an Imam in this Ummah who is going to be killed, whose murder is going to lead to civil war. The Prophet has already informed us about this. Yes. Please, I beg you, please don't be that Imam. So in the vocabulary of Imam Ali alayhi salam, even Uthman is an Imam. Any political ruler is an Imam. Now, if you tally that with this, what the Imam is saying, وَإِنَّمَا الْأَئِمَّةُ قُوَّامُ اللَّهِ عَلَى خَلْقِهِ, that the A'imma, the political rulers, are actually guardians of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this creation. Why are they guardians of Allah upon the creation? Because even though they might be appointed by the people, they are still accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are not the only ones, by the way, who are accountable. In the Quran, Allah says, you can look at the last verse of Surah Al-An'am, Surah number 6 of the Quran, verse 165, and several other verses where Allah says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَكُمْ خَلَائِفَ الْأَرْضِ. Allah has made you children of Adam, the khala'if al-ard, the khalifa on this earth. We are all the vicegerents of God on this earth. But those of us who are elected to positions of power and authority, we have an even greater responsibility and even greater accountability towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You understand? So, yeah, so basically,
how about the part of going heaven and hell?
Right. So then this part, he continues, he says, وَعُرَفَاؤُهُ عَلَى عِبَادِهِ. The A'imma, the leaders, are the Urafa, or the slaves. Okay? They are the people who act as the in charge or overseers over the creations. Then this narration claims, لا يدخل الجنة إلا من عرفهم وعرفوه. No one shall enter Jannah except the one who knows them and who recognizes them, and no one shall enter the fire except the one who rejects them and whom they reject. Now, if you look at the sources of this sermon, you can see it's only mentioned in sectarian sources. Kulaini, Al-Kafi, and Amidi in his Ghurar. Both are 12-verse Shia Imamiyah sectarian sources which take from Ghulat. So we have to be careful. Let's go to the original source. The original source, what did they mention? Usul al-Kafi, volume 1, page 139.
Yeah.
So this is Usul al-Kafi, volume 1, page 139. The sermon is number 5. Okay. Look at the Sanad. Ali ibn Muhammad is taking from, can you read that? Or do I need to
zoom it? Yeah.
Who's that? Sahal ibn Ziyad. What do we know about this narrator?
He's the notorious liar that you've done numerous videos about.
Yeah, the guy who was so notorious for lying against the Ahlul Bayt and adding and interpolating stuff into narrations that he got expelled from the city of Qum by the chief of the Qummis, Sheikh Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Isa al-Ash'ari al-Qummi al-Razi. He expelled him from the city of Qum for lying against Ahlul Bayt. Although the interesting thing is that this edition okay, is not even mentioned in Al-Kafi. Even in this narration, you can read the whole narration from beginning to end, and there is no mention of this part which the speaker is referring to. So this is an interpolation into an interpolation. But basically,
so you've already got someone dodgy as Sal bin Ziyad narrating this. On top of that, this part's not even in there.
it's not even in the original source in Al-Kafi. So it's, yeah, and we honestly don't know where it came from. It's an interpolation clearly, because it's not there in the original source.
As soon as that, you can tell by whoever accepts them goes heaven, whoever, you can already see it's starting to get very ghulu-centric, and in comes Sal bin Ziyad.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the belief system in the Quran. He has not asked us, He has not obligated us to know anyone other than the messengers. The belief system of the Quran ends at messengers. After the last and final messenger, the Quran does not ask you to believe in anyone.
Imam Ali doesn't even force people to do bay'ah. Imam Ali goes to Abdullah bin Umar, give me bay'ah. He says no. Imam Ali says fine. That's it.
Yeah, he does not. Exactly. So that leaves us with the last reference that he gave, Sermon 97. This is about the ashab of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and about his own ashab. But the speaker does not talk about that. Ashab are underrated.
It's like he's talking about Muawiyah here.
Who?
Imam Ali is talking about Muawiyah here.
Yeah, but he's talking about, he's admonishing his own companions, okay, about his companions and the companions of the Prophet.
Okay, nice.
Okay. So,
yeah, which is the part that he wants to kind of zoom in
the
on.
part that he wants to do istidlal based on.
I just saw Kitab Sulaim say it. I'm getting uncomfortable.
Yeah, among the sources is Kitab Sulaim, definitely, Al-Kulayni, Al-Kafi, it's all sectarian sources. But part of it is also reported in the mainstream sources, Ibn Asakir, Al-Jahil, Ansab al-Ashraf by Al-Baladhuri. So there is a core part of this sermon that he had actually delivered, and then you know what the Ghulat like to used to do. They add
the masala on top.
They add the masala. But actually, this as far as this sermon is concerned, I think the part that we can about the household of the Prophet, he says, look at the people of the Prophet's family, adhere to their direction, follow their footsteps, because they would never let you out of guidance and never throw you into destruction. If they sit down, you sit down. If they rise up, you rise up. Do not go ahead of them, as you would thereby go astray, and do not lag behind them, as you would thereby be ruined. This part of the text, we do not see any ghulu in it. It is not problematic. It is basically what we ourselves maintain, that Imams, this much they did accept, they did promote and preach that we should follow the Ahlul Bayt, we should support them in whenever they stand up, to fight for injustice, we should be with them. Whenever they asked us to sit down, as Imam Hassan alayhi salam did, okay, when they ask you to sit down, or when you see them sitting down, you should also sit down. You shouldn't argue and object and be like, no. Basically, be with the Ahlul Bayt, support them, love them, honor them. But a very important thing is, do not go ahead of them. Sayyid Raza, that means if they do not claim divine appointment, or if they are talking about Imams in general, leaders in general, you don't come ahead and you don't come forward and say, oh, no, this is about their divine appointment.
By the way, in that same khutbah going forward, there seemed to be some praise of the companions of the Prophet, by the way.
Yes, very good. I wanted to go into that.
Yeah. We don't need to go to a tafsil, but yeah, there's a...
Yeah, but this is
I would like to see us quoting that part as well.
لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ, but this part they will not mention usually.
Yeah,
because it is in praise of the ashab of the Prophet, and it's a really unfortunate reality. When I want to
even if they do mention it, they will say this is about three companions or something like that.
Because the rest, all of them apostate.
All astaghfirullah,
But anyway. He says, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ أَصْحَابَ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ فَمَا أَرَى أَحَدًا يُشْبِهُهُم مِّنكُمْ. I have seen the companions of the Prophet, but now he's telling his companions, I do not find anyone among you resembling them. They used to begin the day with dust on their hair and face in hardship of life, and they passed the night in prostration and standing in prayers. Sometimes they put down their foreheads and sometimes their cheeks. With the recollection of the resurrection, it seemed as though they stood on live coal. It seemed that in between their eyes there were signs like knees of goats, the sign of prostration, sajde ka nishan, resulting from long prostrations. When Allah was mentioned, their eyes flowed freely with tears till their shirt collars were drenched. They trembled for the fear of punishment and hope of reward, as the tree trembles on the day of stormy wind. Allahu Akbar. What a qasida.
That's a proper qasida of the Sahaba. Ikram.
But Sayyid Raza, this is the tragedy that I want to complain to you about. It's like the Ummah when it's split into two parts. The Shi'as said we take the Imamology, we take the Imams, monopoly over the Imams, and Imams are all we care about. And the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah and the rest of them, they took the Sahaba. Their whole deen became Ashabology, Ashab, to the point that Shaykh Muhammad ibn Yahya an-Ninawi, a great scholar from the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, in his public lectures, he has lamented and complained that when I come and give Jum'ah khutbah and I mention fada'il and excellences and virtues of Al-Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salam, or the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, people in the audience get uncomfortable and they say, oh, please don't speak about the Ahlul Bayt because people will think you are Shia. He says, and some people come to me, he says he's a Sunni, and he's saying, I can't talk about Ahlul Bayt among Ahlul Sunnah congregations, or I face difficulty in doing so because people say, you know what, it's not the right time because people will think that you are Shia.
Like it won't be the right time for us to talk about the companions or Hazrat Abu Bakr or Hazrat Umar. There's never the right time.
Because people will say, yeah, that was his response. He said it was never the right time to talk about the Ahlul Bayt. Because look, Imam al-Nasa'i, he talked about the Ahlul Bayt and he got killed for it. He wrote Kitab al-Khasa'is.
By the Nawasib, yeah.
Yes, and he got killed by the Nawasib. Al-Imam Hakim al-Naysaburi talked about the Fadail of Ahlul Bayt and his mimbar was broken. It was demolished. So angry were the Nawasib. So it was never the right time to talk about the Ahlul Bayt in the past. And it still is not the right time. And basically, it was never the right time to talk about the Ashab within the Shia al-Imamiyah. And today also, it's not the right time. But if we keep on waiting for the right time, Maulana Yawmul Qiyamah will come and we'll still be arguing it's not the right time.
Not the right time because it might benefit the other sect. Right. But yeah, so Sayyid, that deconstructed Sayyid, thank you so much, Sayyid, for going through that. It's been a very helpful tahqiqi research discussion. Inshallah, Sayyid Ammar Nakshawani will watch this and he will benefit from it and see and understand where we're coming from. Inshallah, the main point of this is to kind of show the audience, show the awam, let Sayyid Ammar Nakshawani know as well, let others know as well that listen, this historical narrative of Imam Ali, Nahjul Balagha is with us, it's not with you. Nahjul Balagha presents the historical Imam Ali, and we're happy that you people are coming towards Nahjul Balagha, but with your critical analysis, and it shows you that overall we accept the content of Nahjul Balagha, but even Nahjul Balagha, as you've showed here and there, it can't be trusted blindly. No book can be trusted blindly apart from the Quran. But we overall have a look in and see the historical Imam Ali Nahjul Balagha through Qur'an, through other resources, and wherever we see Sahal bin Ziyad, we run 1,000 miles. Simple as that. And we see Ikram narrating that Imam Ali, was cool with Abu Bakr Umar when they were alive. As soon as they died, he was like, these people done this, these done that. We don't trust that either.
But Sayyid Raza, Ustadh, Hafizakallah, I do want to ask you one thing, which is that, is it fair for us to expect Sayyid Ammar and his likes to sit on the mimbar and present the real historical Imam Ali alayhi salam? Because my question to you is, if he were to do so, would he be, as Sayyid Kamal al-Haydari said, remember about Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khuy, that if he presented the real truth about the incident of the door, that it's a fabrication of the Ghulat, and that it has no basis for it in authentic narrations, هل يبقون له باقية? Would they leave any part of Sayyid al-Khuy standing? So the question is that, yes, we want the historical Imam Ali alayhi salam to be presented, and that's what we are calling towards. But if speakers like Sayyid Ammar started presenting it from the mimbar, just as the mimbar of Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi, the Sunni Imam, the pro-Alid Sunni Imam, was demolished by the Nawasib because he spoke about the fadail of the Ahlul Bayt, and he was politically incorrect, don't you think that the mimbar of Sayyid Ammar will also be demolished, wal-iyadhu billah, by the ghulat and the ghulu influenced people if he starts presenting the real historical Imam Ali alayhi salam? And so this then raises this whole problem within our community that scholars, researchers, and learned people have to make a choice. Do you present your tahqiq on the mimbar? Well, if you're going to present your real research and tahqiq on the mimbar, there is no platform, there is no mimbar that will accept you except the mimbar of Al-Islaah. You will end up on Al-Islaah. The only platform that will have the courage and the guts and the bravery to platform you and host you would be Al-Islaah. But the rest of the mainstream mimbars will all cancel you. And so because of this, we have a very unfair situation whereby every speaker, every researcher, every alim in the 12-er Shia Imamiyya world has to make a decision. After he becomes learned in the sources, he has to make a decision. Do I preach what the masses want, what is popular? But in that case, I have to lie against my own scholarship. I have to misrepresent my own sources. Or do I present the real research? Do I present the real teachings of Ahlul Bayt in the sources? Do I present the historical Imam Ali and historical Ahlul Bayt, but then I get cancelled and I end up stuck on maybe with one platform in the world that will platform me and that will give me the opportunity to speak. So what do you say about this? I can give you an example from the past century. The teacher of my respected father, Al-Allama Sayyid Ali Naqi al-Naqawi, Naqan Sab as they call him, one of the dons, one of the really learned scholars, Mujtahid.
Sahib Shahid Insaniyat, right?
Exactly, the author of Shahid Insaniyat. Sometimes, his close students used to object at times when they used to hear him reciting something in the majlis or in the masahib sometimes. They would say, Sayyidina, you recited this in the majlis, but we have read your book. In the book, you have written the opposite of what you recited from the mimbar. And you know what his response was? This is firsthand transmitted by my father, who was a close student. He studied theology under Al-Allama Ali Naqi al-Naqawi. And he responded very frankly. He said, मैंने जो मिंबर से पढ़ा था वो बरबिनाए अकीदत था और जो मैं किताब में लिखता हूँ वो बरबिनाए तहकीक होता है. You understand? What I recite from the mimbar, what I write in the book is my research.
What I say on the mimbar,
what I recite on the mimbar, because you can't handle my research from the mimbar, I have to present to you what is aqidah, what is common, popular stuff that has emotional appeal. So this is the great zulm that our masses and our Jamaat leaderships are doing on the scholars and the learned people of the sect, is that you are telling your learned scholars, please don't bring your tahqiq, don't bring research, don't bring the real historical Ahlul Bayt whom we don't like and whom we don't want anything to do with on the mimbar. Because if you bring them on the mimbar, just as Imam Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi's mimbar was destroyed, we might not destroy the mimbar, but we will certainly destroy you. We will character assassinate you. We will label you a Wahhabi. We will cancel you. It'll be the end of you. So Sayyid Raza, when we are living in this kind of climate, can we really, in all fairness, expect anyone outside Al-Islaah on the mainstream mimbar, such as Sayyid Ammar, such as Sheikh Muhammad al-Hilli, such as all the other speakers out there, can we really expect them to present these kinds of truths?
No, Ustad, it's a really good question, and I fully understand where you're coming from in your fairness, and Allah bless you and preserve you for your fairness. At the end of the day, Sayyid, people have a choice to make, like you say, they have a choice to make. The choice is the matter of truth and falsehood. The truth and falsehood. The matter also is about standing up for the message of Imam Hussein, because we, at the end of the day, say that we are here following the message of Imam Hussein. Muharram is about to come up. I say, if you don't want to speak the truth and you want to keep the masses happy, then leave narrating what happened with Imam Hussein. Leave it. There's no point of talking about Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein was also cancelled. Imam Hussein was also looked as some sort of astaghfirullah baghi. They made him look like he's a troublemaker. That was the propaganda of his time, and that propaganda exactly. And that propaganda continues till today. That some miskeen people in this ummah still favor people like Yazid and Muawiyah over Imam Hussein. So this is the kind of tragedy that we have in this ummah. So that propaganda continues to today. So we as Shia of Ali, Imam Hussein, if we want to follow the sunnah of Imam Hussein and his way and the way of the Ahlul Bayt, is to speak the truth, even if that means getting cancelled. What does that mean for us here today? It means get cancelled. You might have to suffer some financial loss in this dunya because maybe your financial income is linked to the member. Maybe it should have not been, well, not maybe, it should have never been linked to the member in the first place. Al-awwalan. Second of all,
you see, alhamdulillah, as far as I was concerned, from a very young age, my father saw my interest in public speaking, delivering lectures, sharing ulum of Al-Muhammad. But from day one, he told me, never make this the source of your income and your livelihood. And so because I followed his advice, alhamdulillah, I was in a position, and you are in a position whereby you can afford and you can allow yourself to get cancelled because you do not depend on the minbar for your livelihood. But what about those speakers who do depend on the minbar for their livelihood? Number one. And number two, what about those speakers who have attained and obtained a kind of celebrity status within the communities, and they run the risk of losing that celebrity status if they come out with these inconvenient, unpleasant truths?
well, Said, it's
very difficult.
I'm not on a level of someone like Sayed Ammar Nakshawani, but I was semi-liked when I was trying to expose the other stuff amongst the Sunnis.
I forgot who I was talking to. MashaAllah, you were talking to a celebrity.
I'm not on that level.
I'm a celebrity myself.
No way am I on that level. But I'm sure I was liked when I was digging up problems, or Sunni say this and your book say this. But when I started my own books, you know what happened? Kamal Hedri was another one that used to do the same thing. Mentioned, these debates, etc. Then he started looking to his own sources, and now he's outcast as well. So again, if you want to be a follower of Imam Hussein and you want to speak the truth, you want to get cancelled, Imam Hussein paid a heavy price. He paid a price with the blood of his family and was martyred in the most severe way. If we have to pay a price of being cancelled, I think that's pretty small compared to what Imam Hussein went through.
Absolutely, Sayyid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and preserve you, and may He make you are the ultimate celebrity as far as the speaker corner scene was concerned. Everyone knew you, Ahlul Sunnah knew you, Shia knew you, and everyone loved you and admired you, mashallah. And out of your fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of your concern for your hereafter, when you looked at what you were calling towards and you looked at all the ghulu and the shirk and bid'ah, I think you are an amazing example, an inspiring example of how a person can be a celebrity and yet, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give up his celebrity status, give up, all that fan base and all that, stardom, to start promoting the actual truth and the real historical Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And let me tell you something, the Ahlul Bayt very long ago, they said, "Man tashayya'a فَلْيَتَجَلْبَبْ لِلْبَلَاءِ جِلْبَابًا." Don't think this path of tashayyu' is a path of roses where people will kiss your hands and spread the red carpet for you. The path of tashayyu', the path of Ahlul Bayt, is a path of thorns where people will accuse you and abuse you and vilify you and character assassinate you, as they used to do Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman when he started preaching against the ghulu and the ghulat and against the waqifah. They did so much propaganda against him until he burst into tears in the presence of the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. And the Imam said to him, "Oh Yunus, why are you taking this to your heart? Do you not know that if you had a diamond in your hand, a complete gem in your hand," and the people said, "It's a charcoal, ma yadurruka. What would it harm you? What would it hurt you if you have the absolute gems?" But the people character assassinate you and they say, "Oh no, he just has charcoal in his hand." And what would it benefit you if you had a charcoal in your hand, but the people of the world kept on saying, "Oh, he has a diamond and he has a diamond"? So basically the assurance of the Ahlul Bayt to us is that if you are preaching our real message, don't worry about what the people say. People will character assassinate you. They will abuse you.
People character assassinated. We have negatives. People character assassinated Imam Ali. He was cursed from the member for so many years. He was known as some public enemy number one by people who were not worth the dust underneath his feet.
Absolutely.
So if we're character assassinated, that's a small price to pay.
Absolutely. May Allah
Okay,
subhanahu
Sayyid Ali Hur, I'm not worth.
bless you.
I'm definitely not worth the praise you've given me in terms of I'm not no celebrity status. But Yani, I have a small experience of doing something and leaving that, and we've been through this, so we know how it goes. Allah give tawfiq to our speakers, and this is not an only Shia issue. This is a Muslim issue of sects. This is a Muslim issue of sects, and it exists amongst everywhere. I know many speakers amongst Ahl Sunnah. We know of Engineer of Pakistan. We know how his struggle and what he goes through because he speaks the truth. So we know how these points are. But Sayyid, thank you so much, Sayyid, for joining me today. I really appreciate it, Sayyid. Thank you for your input. Inshallah, Sayyid, I hope to call you back for another expose, and hopefully maybe the next one will be, as we've promised, and I've done an ishara here, maybe the next one will be on Ghadeer. That's a pressing one that I want to get you on, inshallah, Sayyid, because there's a lot of questions coming on that one. So thank you so much, Sayyid. Thank you for coming and giving your expertise on this. And viewers, thank you for joining us. We will inshallah be joining you in the near future. And again, Sayed Ammar Nakshawani, I'm glad he done the video on Nahjul Balagha, gave us an opportunity to give our views. And inshallah, we hope to see you lot soon. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing. Also click the bell icon and choose the all option to get notified for upcoming videos automatically.